When the days grew near for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But they did not receive him because his face was set towards Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them, and then they went on to another village. As they were going along the road, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Humanity has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." But that person said, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the realm of God." Another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home." Jesus said to this person, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the dominion of God."
In April of 1963, "I Will Follow Him" became the #1 song in America on the Billboard charts. It was sung by Margaret Anna Marie Batavio, who was just 15 years old at the time. She was 4 feet 9 inches tall, so they gave her the nickname of Little Peggy March. I remember listening to this song on my little Philco radio in my dorm room at Iowa State University. The song spoke to me in a different level than the one intended by the songwriter, because I had just recently decided that I was going to transfer schools and begin a course of study that would eventually lead me to ordination into Christian ministry. So it talked to me. It meant a lot to me. At the time, it seemed that the lyrics were expressing how I felt about following Christ, about my desire to be a disciple of the Christ, to be a servant of Christ's people. When the movie Sister Act came out with Whoopi Goldberg, it just seemed like this climax to the plot was perfect. It was the fulfillment of a 30-year vision of what I thought that song could mean in a church setting. I love it. It's perfect. Recently in my reading, I came across a statement that caused me to think about this business of following Christ. It's now been more than 50 years. Wow. It's been more than 50 years since that initial desire and decision was made, and I'm afraid that my record as a disciple is really nothing much to be proud of. I would say that the kindest thing I could say is that my performance as a disciple of Jesus is irregular at best. What caught my attention in my reading was this penetrating question. When it comes to Jesus, who is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, the Savior of the world, the exalted, risen one, one with God and Spirit, eternal, when it comes to this Jesus, are you merely a fan? Or are you a follower? Do I merely admire Jesus as one would admire a handsome movie star? Do I express my love for Jesus by voting for Him as one would vote for a contestant on American Idol? Or do I follow Jesus by imitating His example in the way that I relate to the world? Do I treat people the way Jesus treated people? Do I speak the truth as He spoke the truth? Do I trust God the way He trusted God, even when His trust took Him to a cross? These are tough questions. Well, according to the gospel writers, Jesus had a habit of just walking up to people and saying, "Follow me." And supposedly they did. It's kind of amazing. Seems kind of abrupt, doesn't it? Almost rude. No prospectus, no grand plan, no well-defined agenda, no regard for family obligations or responsibilities. He just said, "Follow me." And supposedly they followed him. Now, I suspect there's a lot of backstory about these calls to follow me that Jesus issued that we really don't know. We don't know what those backstories are. Perhaps the gospel writer just left out the hours of discussion and persuasion and negotiation that may have preceded that final closing sales pitch. Follow me. But just a few verses before our text for today, Luke records Jesus saying to all the gathered followers, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." So let's take a closer look at the text for today and see what it says about following Jesus as a disciple. Chapter 9, verse 51. When the days grew near for Jesus to be taken up, his face was set to go to Jerusalem. Now keep in mind that Luke is writing his gospel after the fact. He knows the end of the story. And so he's hinting here about what is to come. He's shaping the story as a fulfillment of Jesus' destiny. And it's an interesting phrase that he uses. He set his face to go to Jerusalem. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, have you ever watched a little kid who is trying to master the art of tying his shoe? Okay, the eyes kind of narrow, and the brow gets kind of furled in. Maybe he sticks his tongue out the side of his mouth, you know. Nah, I'm going to get this if it kills me, you know. It's that kind of intensity. You see them happen. Well, this is sort of what's going on here. Jesus is determined to go to Jerusalem. Determined to confront the religious bigotry of his day. Determined to speak of the grace of God at the seat of legal and religious power, even if it kills me. Now, here's a little geography lesson so you can better understand what happens next. You'll forgive me for this, I hope. We'll start with a blank slide, and then we'll add a little blue on the left-hand side. This is the Mediterranean Sea. Now, just right at the top, just in a little bit from that little hook you see in the coastline, we'll put in the Sea of Galilee. It's really not a very big sea. It's a tiny thing. Now, we're going to go pretty much straight down towards the bottom, and we'll put in the Dead Sea. And of course, the Galilean Sea and the Dead Sea are joined by the Jordan River. Jordan River is not the Mississippi, okay? It's not even the Trinity. It's more like Collin Creek. Pretty dinky. Now, Nazareth, Jesus' hometown, is located approximately here. It's about halfway between the Sea of Galilee and the coastline. And Capernaum, where Jesus has been doing a lot of his preaching, it's sort of the center of his ministry, is located approximately here at the northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee. Jerusalem, though, is down here in the mountains, northwest of the Dead Sea. Bethany, where Jesus liked to stay with Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they kept the light on for him, is just outside Jerusalem. And fabled Jericho, where the walls came tumbling down, is approximately here. Now, it's just 13 miles between Jericho and Jerusalem, but it's quite a climb. Jerusalem is almost 2,600 feet above sea level, and Jericho is 820 feet below sea level. So that's almost 3,500 feet of climb between those two towns in 13 miles. That's quite a hike. Now, the distance between Capernaum and Jerusalem is about 95 miles as the crow flies. It's about the distance between Dallas and Waco. Walking briskly, you could make it in about 5 or 6 days, or 3 or 4 weeks in my case. But here's the rub. Samaria. Not a country with clearly defined borders, but a region where people lived who had different ideas about religion, different ideas about history, different ideas about values, certainly different customs. Now, most observant Jews from the Nazareth-Capernaum area would cross over to the east side of the Jordan River and go down the east side to avoid going through the rough area called Samaria. It's a little bit like some people might go out of their way to avoid going through Oak Lawn or Oak Cliff or any other place where you might get into trouble, a risky neighborhood. Wouldn't want to go there after dark. And then they cross back over the Jordan River and Jericho and make the climb up to Jerusalem. Jesus is determined to go to Jerusalem, but look how he decides to get there. Jesus sends his advance men to make reservations. Where? In Samaria. He's going to Jerusalem right through Samaria. Now I can just imagine the conversation at the Holiday Inn in Shechem, which is the capital city of Samaria. We'd like to book some rooms for Jesus of Nazareth and a party of 12. Okay, where are you all headed anyway? Well, we're just passing through. We're on our way to Jerusalem. At Jerusalem, we don't cater to your kind around here. Now get out of here before I sick the Romans on you. And when the word of this rejection gets back to Jesus and the disciples, James and John, two of the disciples, go ballistic. Remember, they were nicknamed the Sons of Thunder, which means they were a bunch of hotheads. Okay? They wanted to have Jesus command fire to come down from heaven and consume them. You know, that kind of thing. That'll teach them a lesson. But Jesus apparently uses this as a teaching moment. Don't you wish we could know what he says to James and John? Don't you wish you could be a little mouse in the corner and listen to that conversation? There are some ancient manuscripts that include these words supposedly from the mouth of Jesus at this point. You do not know what spirit you are of, for the Son of Humanity has not come to destroy the lives of human beings, but to save them. Don't know whether that's authentic or not, but it fits. We've talked a lot about pride this month, this Pride Tide. And we should be proud of who we are and what has been achieved in the quest for equality and liberty. We celebrate what the Supreme Court has done regarding marriage equality. And yet, we tremble because that same court has unfettered bigotry that works to deny people access to the most precious of civil rights, the right to vote. We must learn to be very, very careful in our pride, because there's a thin line between pride and prejudice. Samaritans were proud of their heritage, a heritage that goes all the way back to the northern kingdom of Israel. Jews were very proud of their heritage, a heritage that goes all the way back to the southern kingdom called Judah. They were once united under David and Solomon. Now they're divided, and they're proud of it. And James and John, newly proud of their association with the Christ, the Messiah, quickly crossed that border from pride into judgment. And that's contrary to the teaching and the behavior of Jesus. Now, what follows in the text now is actually a trilogy of 3 different instances that all relate to the call of Jesus to follow me. It's unlikely that these encounters happen sequentially. It's unlikely that they all happened at the same time. But Luke gathers them here because they all relate to this situation. Jesus is moving towards Jerusalem, going through the Samaritan region, and in the very next chapter he's going to be sending these disciples out 2 by 2 into this area, Samaria, with this message: the realm of God has come near to you. So here's the first of these 3 instances. As they were going along the road, someone said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. But we all know this person, don't we? This is the one who is always the first to raise a hand, quick to volunteer, quick to say, I'll be there, I'll do it, I'll take care of it. And then they never show up. Good intentions, no follow-up. This is the one who never realizes that there is a cost to discipleship. The comforts and the security of home that even the wild animals enjoy are not options for the Son of God, and by extension, perhaps not options for those who would follow the Son of God. To another he said, follow me, but that person said, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. Now, that seems very reasonable, doesn't it? Should not a person take familial responsibilities seriously? Jesus seems callous to the would-be follower's request, almost cruel with insensitivity to a person's grief. He says, let the dead bury their own dead. That's you. Go. Proclaim the realm of God. This is a reference to a very ancient practice called double burial. Sometimes after the initial burial of a body of an official or important person or a head of a household, the bones of that person would be exhumed and then placed into an ossuary box like this one and then reburied. That process takes time. Jesus doesn't have time. He's set his face for Jerusalem. He's a man on a mission. And Luke wants you to remember that he has a date with destiny. In other words, Jesus can't wait for someone to perform a sentimental tradition. The proclamation of the realm of God has an urgency to it, one that takes priority over all the rituals and customs and traditions that fritter away our time and our resources. And then thirdly, there is this incident where someone says to Jesus, I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home. Now again, that sounds very reasonable. If I'm going to follow this itinerant preacher off to God knows where, can't I at least say goodbye to my friends and my family? Jesus responds with a line that has haunted me for years. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the dominion of God. Unfit for the realm of God. I learned to drive when I was 10 years old on this. A little Ferguson tractor. I had to stand up to force the clutch down and to operate the brake, but I could drive it. It was my tractor. One day my dad decided I was big enough to help him with the plowing. Now he took great pride in his work and he was exceptionally good at laying out a furrow across a field. A furrow that was as straight as an arrow. This is how he told me to do it. You pick out a spot on the horizon. A tree, a fence post, a telephone pole, something. And then you just drive your tractor right towards that spot. Well, sounds easy enough. Okay. So I adjusted the hydraulic on the tractor and dropped the plow to the ground and picked out my spot on the horizon. I pulled the throttle back on the engine, and it kind of growled, and I let the clutch up and we started off. Just watch that spot back there. Okay. I'm driving. I wonder if the plow actually entered the ground. Maybe it's just scooting along the top of the ground and all the neighbors are going to be laughing at me. Oh, he told me not to look back. Oh, I got to know. It'll just take a second. It'll just take a second. I'll look. Okay, got that done. Okay, we're going along, and pretty soon my mind begins to wander. Let's turn on the radio, shall we? That's the wrong station. Where? I can't find that station. Well, I'll just take a quick look. Won't matter. Okay. Okay. And I keep on going. And I get to the end of my field and I turn around. My furrow doesn't look anything like my dad's. My dad had a perfectly straight furrow and I thought I could do the same, but my furrow wandered across the field. I thought I could correct my wandering, but every time I went down that furrow again, it just got worse. That's what happens when you get a little deviation, and the first thing you know, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's the way it feels sometimes. I want to follow Jesus. I want to focus on Him in my life, but the distractions, the distortions, the little things that come along keep sending me off course, and it just gets worse. Too many times I put my hand to the plow and then succumb to the temptation to look back or to look aside. Does that mean I'm unfit for the realm of God? Well, thankfully, my dad didn't get angry with me. He didn't punish me for my less than perfect technique. He simply said, go over here a few more yards and try it again. And God is no less gracious with us. You see, these incidents where Luke records things that Jesus said to would-be followers are not really intended as teaching. These three incidents are insight into the character and personality of Jesus. Jesus is someone who has set aside the creature comforts and sentimentality in order to pursue His mission in life. Jesus is a man who chose to focus on His calling and to follow it and to live it, even if it cost Him His life. And even now, there are folks who would have you believe that following Christ is just a matter of a long list of do's and don'ts, prohibitions. Most of the time it's trivial stuff. And in the grand scheme of things, the lists they give you don't matter. I'm sure you've heard the old saying, I don't smoke, drink, or chew. I don't go out with girls that do. Never did. Still don't. I've been following a blog on the internet called The God Article, written by Mark Sandlin. He's an ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church, USA. In a couple of weeks, he posted an article listing the 10 things you can't do while following Jesus. Now, it's not an exhaustive list. It's not an inclusive list. It's just a list, okay? But I thought it was instructive, so I'm going to bring it to you this morning. It's not your grandmother's list, okay? Number 10. You can't exclude people because they practice another religion. Jesus was constantly including people, and He did it with a total disregard for their religion. We do not have a single recorded incident of Jesus asking for a person's religious affiliation before being willing to speak with him or break bread with him. We've already seen today how Jesus chose to travel through Samaria rather than avoid potential conflict and hostility. Number 9, exclude people for what they look like, how they were born, or things beyond their control. Jesus constantly included people. He had this rebel streak in him, that actually sought out folks who didn't fit in. People who were different, people who were marginalized, people who were made to feel unwanted in one way or another. They had a special place in His heart, in His life, in His actions. And I suspect He did it because He understood that in God's eyes, they're not different at all. Number 8, withhold health care from people. When you play the game, follow the leader. If you don't do what the leader does, you're out. Following means you imitate as closely as possible. When people who were sick came to Jesus, He gave them their health back. If we're following Jesus, then we will imitate Him as closely as we possibly can. Number 7, exclude people, period. For any reason. Jesus was constantly including people. It's a little concept called love, and He was pretty big on it. Number 6, let people go hungry. When Jesus said, feed my sheep, it was more spiritual feeding. If Gandhi was right, spiritual and physical feeding can't be separated. He said, there are people in the world so hungry that God cannot appear to them except in the form of bread. There's no food shortage in the world. There's not even a problem with our distribution system. It can handle it. The problem is that people aren't very good at sharing. Number 5, make money more important than God and the children of God. It's a cliche, but it's true. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. We make choices about what we do with our money every day of our lives. Our choices speak louder than our words. People are willing to shop at stores because the prices are cheaper, even though we know that the products that we're buying recklessly endanger the lives of those who make them. People buy mass-produced food with disregard for health implications because the farmer down the road is more expensive, you see. We'd rather keep more of our money than pay the taxes it takes to provide for those in need. We have a money problem, and it's not because we don't have enough. Number 4, judge others. Remember when Jesus talked about letting the one who was without a sin cast the first stone? Well, He meant it. He meant it. And that includes making judgments whatsoever, any judgments whatsoever about anyone's eternal destiny. That judgment is for God and God alone to decide. That judgment is not ours to make, ever. Number 3, be physically aggressive or violent. Oh yes, Jesus could get angry. That episode where Jesus overturned money changers' tables in the temple is an example of that, but even then it was the tables that he overturned, not the money changers themselves. Most of the time, Jesus followed the path of nonviolence. Number 2, use the church to hurt people. That includes people with whom we disagree. If you have been hurt by the church, if you have been hurt by the people in the church, please know that such hateful acts and words are the polar opposite of following Jesus. Using an institution whose primary goal is meant to be love to hurt people is anti-Christ. And the number one thing you can't do while following Jesus, hate. The one possible exception might be to hate itself, but even that breeds hate, so just stay away from it. Just stay away from it. So what does it mean for you to follow Jesus? Well, truthfully, that's not for me to say. Your path is different than my path. God's intention for you is unique for you. But from the life of Jesus, we can see what it may mean. It may mean going to dangerous or hostile places to confront power, or to offer grace, to help, to heal, to love. When Jesus says to you, follow me, it may mean some kind of sacrifice. There may be things in life, maybe even good things, that you may have to leave behind. When Jesus says to you, follow me, it may mean that some of the sentimental traditions that we love may have to be left for others to take care of. There may have to be a shift in your priorities if you intend to follow Jesus. And when Jesus says to you, follow me, it may mean that you're going to have to get to work with absolute focus on the person of the Christ, who is your source and your destination, your starting point and your goal, your strength in your weakness. It means that with the grace of Jesus, we can start again when we mess it up. Jesus has set his face towards justice and truth and love. Jesus, this risen Christ, our eternal God, looks you right in the eye and says, follow me. What is your answer?